if they yawn or look tired, it's not because you're boring, it's because they're exhausted. So let's give a round of applause to Rachel and Emily.
Hi, friends. So before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to Megan for inviting us, and to Susan. I don't know if you're here. Thank you for dealing with my slides. That's awesome. So yeah, I'm Rachel Rushing.
I'm Emily Riggert. Rachel and I are both visual artists based in Oak Cliff. We met maybe 5 years ago, and both working for a creative exchange called Oil and Cotton. And from there, about 4 years ago, we founded Sunset Art Studios as a social practice art space. We have a gallery. We have a residency program that hosts up 3 to 4 artists per year. We have shared studio space, which is kind of like co-working space for artists. And that's who we are.
Yeah.
What else?
So everything that we do, this is very intense, Mike. Everything we do is kind of wrapped up in this concept of social practice, like Emily mentioned. And so this is kind of our quick elevator sentence. We are a social practice collaboration focused on creating access to the arts in Oak Cliff. That is our jam. But what does that even mean? So if you haven't heard the term social practice before, it's kind of new in the art world as a term. But if you have a design practice, or you have a painting practice, or anything like that, a lettering practice, you're familiar with the work that goes into creating all of those things. So we view social practice as that same thing, but where the social aspect and the people are what we are focused on. The art that we make doesn't exist without other people. So I always like to share that the Tate actually has a great definition and website, but you don't have to read all of that. I pulled the fun words out. Can include any art form which involves people. It's about communities, whether they're debating, collaborating, some kind of social interaction. Basically, everything we do in the studio is about inviting more people in rather than trying to like hide away and focus. We all need that time, but this is a little bit more open than that.
Yeah, I like to say that our practice is a very extroverted one. I think sometimes people can think of artists as just going into their studios and being closed off and making their work, and then it's only accessible when it's on view in the gallery. For us, we're trying to break open that model, kind of disrupt that system of artists as kind of their own entity, and really create a collaboration between artists and the community. For me, since we're here talking about inspiration, I'm always so much more inspired when I can bring other people's ideas into the circle of what I'm thinking about, because everybody's bringing their own richness of their own history, their own traditions, and when we have a group talking together, we have such a more vibrant project. And for us, I think that's what we're trying to do with especially our projects that we do, and then our residency program as well. We ask that artists open up their studios, where we have open studios where people can come and see what the artists are doing throughout their process. But also we host community events where we'll tell you a little bit more about what each one has been so far, but where the artist is making a project that is about their artwork, but it's more of an interaction between the artist and the public. Then the things that happen in those community events are what inform the creation of their work for the gallery show. So it's much more of a conversation than it is, just a single direct path.
For sure. This is actually a nice shot of one of our projects that we did, a good example of a collaboration. MAP, Make Art with Purpose, is another local group, and they are similarly focused on working in different communities. They actually are international? Mm-hmm. Yeah, international. But for our space, they wanted to actually create a pop-up outdoor library, and so we had that up for about a month a few years ago. This is kind of our motivation, or what we like to think, how we like to approach art. We're also both educators, and when I'm teaching, I, especially like art art appreciation is my favorite class of all time, because it's all about learning more about a world maybe you didn't even know about, especially if it's students that don't have art backgrounds. But in that class, I like to ask people, what is art? What is good art? And then what's the point of art? And those are all questions that I don't feel like many of us ask every day. And inside of Sunset, we also like to ask, what can art do, especially in communities? So through a variety of different projects, art can be an advocate for change. It can educate people. It can improve the quality of life. It can celebrate really anything, but especially where we are, I think we really focus on celebrating a diverse community where we live, of the artists that we work with, all of those kinds of things. This is actually a really great resource that we reference a lot, is Projects for Public Spaces. So if you aren't familiar with them, but you're interested in this very social interaction, they're a great place to go look. This is their kind of map of what makes a great place. They reference the phrase placemaking a lot. We kind of
Disrupt that a
disrupt that a little bit. Yeah, that's a good phrase.
we focus more on placekeeping. So that means going into a community and seeing what already exists and finding ways to celebrate that rather than coming into a community and saying, here's a project we think you would like. We come in and say, what kind of project can we help you create? What do you need? And how can we use our tools as artists to make that happen for you?
I always like to share this because one thing that we've always been pretty adamant about from the very beginning is that we never wanted to be a short-term project. Mm-hmm. We always wanted to have longevity because I think it's been a pretty distinct motivation that we never wanted to, Muse, that we never wanted to just drop ourselves into a community and know that it was going to be short term and then we're out and that project had no relevance and has no longevity, and the community that we were a part of ended up being disrupted by our activity instead of being supported by it. So part of the process is always about how anything we work on is sustained. How does it keep going? And a lot of that comes from this is kind of hard to read, but comes from these kind of basic principles. This is also from Project for Public Spaces. But the number one principle is that the community you're in is the expert. We are not the experts in the community space. We're there to facilitate and accomplish their goals. And so I think that is primary for us in everything we do, is how can we support you? Because you're actually the expert on what you want and what your dreams are and what you know is best for yourself.
Well, just an example of what we did here, we've been kind of talking in abstract about these projects. An example of one that we did over the summer was at Fair Park. If y'all aren't familiar with Fair Park, they've got they have the fair every October, but throughout the year, it's publicly accessible space. And there's a couple of different groups who are in there now trying to activate that space, reactivate, making it more vibrant year-round, not just during the fair. So we got approached to do a project there. And one of the spaces that they really wanted to activate was the lagoon. And it's a small pond. It's got some concrete sculptures throughout it, and we developed a walking practice that got people walking around the lagoon, creating small, vibrantly colored objects to place as they walked. So this is a project that could be done anywhere, but we wanted to make sure that we were working with them to put it in a place that was encouraging people to use the space as it was already designed.
And so through that, a lot of the people that we got to work with were people who lived right outside Fair Park. And I don't know how many of y'all are from here, but Fair Park has been a pretty deserted space for a very long time. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people who live in that area. They just aren't being given any services through that space. So it becomes this sort of wasteland anytime outside of October. So this was a great chance for us to be able to come in and work with the people who are right there and celebrate what they already have with them through this very small project.
So since we're here to talk about inspiration, we are fortunate enough to have so many different wonderful artists who come through our residency space, and we wanted to share with you a little bit about their inspiration for their projects. And before we do that, I just wanted to say a little bit about what inspires us to facilitate this. As Rachel mentioned, we're both educators, and I think that's part of why we're doing what we're doing, because there's something about when you're teaching somebody something.
I think it all bleeds together.
It does. When you're teaching somebody something, you're watching them get to that finish line of understanding what it is that you're teaching, and then they have that aha moment, but then that is mirrored right back in you, and it's this very reflexive process. And for us, I think the residency is of that same ilk. Watching artists come in, find their inspiration in our space and being able to facilitate it is so exciting for us. So we've had, how many years of the residency? We're just finishing up our 4th year of the residency. Oh, I think isn't my mic on? Yeah. I'm just not holding it close enough. And we wanted to share with you a few artists to highlight. I think we'll start with our most recent. Do you have slides of that? So this is Kiara Walls. She was our first resident this year. She did a project about asking the question, what would reparations look like today? And she built 2 different theater spaces in our gallery. She built an indoor one and an outdoor one. Both of them were called Black Box. And she went around the community asking people that same question, what would reparations look like today? And we had video. And on the top right, you can see a photo of the Black Box at night. We had videos of that playing inside the boxes, and then people would come out and write on the walls their own impressions of what happened in that question. So she's really looking at that what kind of equality we can create today, and that was her inspiration. Who do we have next?
Well, and kind of the foundation of all of these is that for every residency that we operate, we kind of understand that the biggest resource we can give them is space. Mm-hmm. Space is hard to come by. Yeah. Probably hence why co-working spaces exist. And if we can provide them access to space, which is free for the length of their residency, that gives them the blank canvas to be able to fill that with their own ideas and express what they're trying to work on or work through whatever concepts they've been mulling over inside of that blank space. We're also very proud that we fund every resident when we have the chance, which was why we did North Texas Giving Day yesterday. So ever since we started, it has been a goal of ours that we can also pay our residents. Most artist residencies structure it where you pay them as an artist.
You pay to apply, you pay to get there if it's out of your city, you pay to live there while you're there, and you pay because you're not doing other work that you might be able to do on the external work. So it's really cost inefficient or ineffective for many people, and we're trying to break that boundary down.
Yeah. Because everything we do is about removing barriers to the arts, and so it's not just for public access to the arts, it's also the barriers that are in place about making art, because it can be a very classed system that prevents a lot of people from being involved. So Kiara was able to use that space for her time to think about the questions that really mattered to her. Amy was next, and I know you really connected with Amy.
Yeah, I worked with Amy's residency a lot. She goes by the name Kokwat Likwe, and she did a project called Poetry as Protest, and so she was blending her creative writing practice with her visual art making practice, and for her community event, she had people come in and make felted letters that then they took photographs of to create their own poetry. So you can see that in the top right. And her residency was really beautiful. She also made little ofrendas, altars, to the idea of protesting. And she was our summer resident. Is that right?
Spring 2.
Spring 2. Yeah, we are getting ready to start our 4th residency. And we are so fortunate to say that all 4 of our residencies have been funded this year. Yeah. The first 3 were funded through the Office of Cultural Affairs, what was it called? Cultural Vitality Grant. And then our 4th residency, we just found out we got funded yesterday through North Texas Giving Day. So that means we have administrative funds to pay ourselves for helping that out.
The first time ever.
And also, more importantly, we get to pay every artist that comes in gets $1,200 for their time with us.
And then we just finished summer residency with Danielle, who has since moved on. She was blown by the wind.
Well, and no, this is really great because we love to see what our artists are doing after they leave our residency, and she's going to a year-long residency in Lubbock. So that's so exciting to see our place as a little incubator and, having artists go on from there. She's a recent graduate of University of Mary Hardin Baylor in Temple? Temple.
Something like that. Danielle's project was really beautiful. She was thinking a lot about this phrase, Black girl magic, and so kind of taking that as a starting off point, she was working through ideas of like magic, but also trauma and healing, and then also using synthetic hair as this fiber making tool. So through that material, being able to talk about things like beauty salons and that sort of community and healing space for Black women who have to deal with so much trauma. This is a shot of her on the right, but they were having a lot of fun being in the beauty shop. Does anybody have any questions about our residents before we move on? Because I think we would both just love to talk about them all day. Yeah, yes. So the image on the left is inside the gallery space looking out towards the street.
Can you talk a little bit more about the physical space? Sure. Yeah, so the physical space, we are located in a 1950s office building in Elmwood, which is kind of right in the middle of Oak Cliff. We have about 800 square feet of gallery and studio space. We've kind of, since we started with just that original 800 square feet, but the building's pretty large, and we've kind of piecemealed our way up through the building. But that space downstairs it hosts a gallery that's kind of a long L-shaped gallery, and then residents also receive one studio space that's located within the gallery, which is really special because they get to create their work in the studio and then also at the same time workshop what it's going to look like in the gallery as they go. And then, yeah, and we also opened a print studio, which we'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute, but residents have access to the print studio as well, which will have screen printing, block printing, photo printing, both digital and darkroom soon.
All of the printing.
All of the printing, yeah.
And that brings us to the print studio. So everything we do, as we've said, is about creating access, and over the past 4 years, that's taken on different iterations as we've continued to grow. And I'm really happy that we've been able to build on instead of cutting anything, and been able to do that amazingly enough through different funding avenues. So while we have the artist residency, that space is always free for the length of the residency, and we try to pay those artists. We have the member studios upstairs, which are rentable studio space, and that sort of builds this co-op model that helps fund the residency as well. If we don't have grant money, we know that we'll still be open. And then while we also have the gallery space, I hoard equipment and materials.
She does. She has so many things.
I have so many things. And so over time realized, I have everything it takes to open a print studio. Why don't we just do that?
And it was all crammed into her small studio space.
It was real stressful.
And so now she has a studio again, and we have a print studio, so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, so in that, since August? Since the beginning of August, we moved into the print studio, and we built some tables, thanks YouTube. So we've got some screen printing equipment. There's a really beautiful darkroom sink back there that we're going to get an appointment with a plumber this week to hook up. We've got a nice large format printer. There's a couple of enlargers down there on the bottom right. You can't really tell, but they do exist. So over the next couple of months, we're going to be working on finishing the outfit of everything to get that up and accessible, and that will be accessible for all of our residents, all of our members. We're especially going to be reaching out to different community groups that want to come in. We have a couple of relationships with different cultural centers in the area so that they can bring in their communities that they're already have deep relationships with, and then learn maybe these new processes or just express things that they've already been wanting to work on in this new way.
And also, the print studio will be rentable by the half day, by the day. So we'll have, and this may be, y'all are all designers, is that right? Are we? Different things, designers, photographers. We have, it'll be rentable for you as just a workspace. If you need a giant digital plotter, there'll be a training you can come do to learn how to use the equipment, but then you can come in on your own and rent it and use it to make your projects happen.
So this is all accessible on our website, which has just recently been redesigned by Ryan Rushing. But what? So sunsetartstudios.com. If you are interested in applying for residency, if you have some sort of social practice concept you want to work on or run by us, we've got a residency application at the top. We do have member space open right now.
Yep.
We have a studio open. So if you're looking for studio space, we try to encourage people to apply if they are interested in community, because that's our primary goal with the member studios, is that we're able to build a solid community to support each other through. So that application is there, and then, of course, we're always accepting donations. But the print studio, you can click on right there, and you can do a lot of things in there. So we've got some workshops coming up. Actually, our first workshop is next weekend, and that's going to be led by Ryan Rushing.
What is it?
I think it's lettering and lino cut. So you can learn about block printing. You can learn a little bit more about lettering. He's going to amaze you, blow your mind. He actually designed this as well.
And the workshops will also be a way to get to know the space so that you can come in later and use it on your own. Yeah. So if you attend a workshop, you learn how to use the processes there, then you're granted access to come rent the space later as well. Yeah.
So all of this is pretty exciting stuff for us, and we're always trying to think critically about whatever we're working on, take time to reflect and say, is this working? Is this doing what we hope it's doing? Is this serving anyone? And so we're really excited for the print studio because we're hopeful that that is going to be able to serve a lot more people moving forward. So
What time is it?
5 till you have to leave.
Well, I can stay till like 9. Well, to what is it?
9:25.
I can stay till like 9:35.
Okay, so I guess with that, are there any questions? And I'll put this up too. Like, comment, and subscribe.
How do you guys find your residents? It's kind of a collaboration. People cold call, they just apply. There are other people who we are friends with, who we just through our friendship and sharing our practices together, they'll come talk to us about residency ideas. Then there's been some other people who we've kind of sought out and thought, hey, your project looks really right for our space. Would you consider a residency? So kind of all three. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we got those day jobs. So both of us do work full-time. This is not our full-time job, though we wish it was. Mm-hmm. Emily is a teacher, which is where she's going to go when she has to leave.
Yeah, I'm an elementary art school teacher. I teach pre-K through 5th at a school in Oak Cliff called the Kessler School. And it really does tie into what I feel like is a community practice for me. I'm getting ready to do a project with the kids today where we're creating an installation in our gallery space at school. So I'll be taking the kids with me into the gallery space to take the work that they've made. We've made these giant 3D color wheel paper sculptures, and we're going to work together to make a project and hang it together. So I often feel like sometimes the conductor of an orchestra, maybe, like they're making the work, but I'm kind of figuring out how to make it all come together. So that's
yeah.
And then, but the school hours are flexible. I don't have to be there till 10 today. So, and then I'll work till 3:30. So it's not 8 hours of monolithic one place. So I'm able to find time outside of that to make sunset things happen. It is a hustle though. I mean. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, and that's something we're working on, is making it less of a hustle. My day job is that I work at the Nasher Sculpture Center, and I am the community engagement coordinator. So if you want to bring art from the Nasher to your space, let me know. That is kind of more of a standard 9-to-5 job, but because it is a cultural space, we have a lot of weird hours, and so that kind of frees me up throughout the week to be able to work on things. But there's also like a lot of getting up at 6 o'clock and working until 7:30, and then going to work, and then coming home and working for 3 more hours.
And when Sunset started, we didn't have a studio space yet. We were meeting in our homes, like over dinner. It really has been a labor of love, and it has been largely volunteer-based on our part. 2019 has seen a couple of opportunities for us to begin paying ourselves, which we're all about. Since we are all about paying artists, we need to include ourselves in that too.
So kind of like another logistics thing to your question is like, how does this thing happen? I think I mentioned a few times, but we are not possible without support from the community through grants that we write. We write a lot of grants. We get rejected on a lot of them, but sometimes we get them.
Sometimes they say yes.
Yeah, sometimes they say yes. And then we also accept donations because we did just get our nonprofit status back in February. So that kind of hopefully opens the door to a lot of new funding opportunities so that we can keep doing this kind of stuff.
Kale? Yeah.
How do your artists build a bridge between their practice and the community? So if someone comes from outside, how do they find those community members, give them feedback to collaborate?
So we are building relationships with a lot of different community partners within the community. For example, our neighborhood association, we are big partners with theirs, so they're kind of the feet on the ground. They live in the neighborhood, so they're a good resource. We are, how else?
We're working with a few other groups and these are all people that we've been working with for years and slowly building relationships with rather than trying to do like these one-off projects. We really try to hold on to everyone that we meet very tightly because we love them all. But places like the Neighborhood Association, there's also a really wonderful place called 4 Oak Cliff that does awesome work in South Oak Cliff. And so we're hoping that we can work with them more to bring their community arts programming because they don't do tons of that right now. They have some, but we're really curious how we could support them in expanding that.
Cultural centers as well, the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, the South Dallas Cultural Center, those are good resources. Those are 2 neighborhoods where we do a lot of work. So like Rachel said earlier in the talk, it's really finding the people in the community who are already the community experts and speaking with them and seeing who their audience is. And then figuring out ways to work together.
And then it kind of depends on the artist too, because we've had several different artists who have these very hyper-specific focuses for their projects. And so because Emily's from Dallas, and then I've lived in Oak Cliff, we lived in Dallas for about 10 years now, and so over that time, we were able to remember, oh, that sounds like this really great thing that this one person at this one place did this one time, you should talk to them. And so we work really hard to try and make all those connections as well, because I think aside from creating access to the space, we're trying to create connections for people.
Right, yep. And then we've also worked with things like the Texas Organizing Project to go and knock on neighbors' doors to talk to them about projects in the space and say, hi, we're the artists around the corner. Would you be interested, available?
We have that weird thing up outside.
Yeah, we have the pavilion. Yeah, so, does that answer your question? Yeah. We are always available by appointment, and then we use our community events as studio tours, so anytime we have a public event, anybody is welcome to come and take a tour of the studio, but you can also just email us if you want to come by. We are pretty available, because the 2 of us have jobs that aren't necessarily, time restrictive or, certain time, a certain place. We're able to find windows to take tours, so is our email up there? You can email. It's info@sunsetartstudios.com, or Emily or Rachel. Other questions? Thank you guys for listening to us today. Oh, question? No? Okay.
No? That was a clap.
I was like, ready for a clap. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Emily and Rachel. We're going to move into Community Spotlight. Logan, if you want to come up and start, but Community Spotlight is giving you the stage for 30 seconds. If you have something that you want to talk about that you think is relevant to everyone here, do try to keep it to 30 seconds. We're going to start doing a timer to keep things moving. Logan is prepared. Here he is.
I'm Logan. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take an opportunity to highlight a special event coming to Dallas in October. It's called 48 and 48. And the event is basically volunteer-based, where you have 48 hours to design 48 nonprofit websites for nonprofits that either don't have the budget or don't want to put the money aside because it's very expensive to build websites. And basically, we're opening up. We're calling all project managers, digital marketers, WordPress gurus, designers, and content managers to sign up and help out with this event. So if you are interested and want to know more, come find me after the Community Spotlight, and I'll give you guys more information on that. But the links are 48and48.org about the event, and then the volunteer sign up is below that. But again, if you didn't get this information down, just come find me after, and I'll explain a little more about it. Thank you.